The educator Dr. Maria Montessori once said,
"The child developing harmoniously and the adult improving himself at his side make a very exciting and attractive picture."
Welcome to Montessori Education with me, Jesse McCarthy, where we talk raising children and educating students while bettering ourselves right alongside them. Hello, everyone. Today we'll be talking Montessori for ages 0 to 3. Everybody seems to name it differently: babies, infants, toddlers, whatever you would like to call it, or you do call it. We're talking the years 0 to 3. And before I introduce you to Gabriela Velazquez properly, who is a trainer who will be with us today, I just thought I'd play a clip from our conversation that I just found hilarious and gives a flavor for this wonderful woman. Super insightful, but she's direct too. So here we go.
Sometimes you are in the restaurant and the child behind you is pulling your hair or is throwing things, and the parents are like, "Oh, he's so social." No, he's not being social. He's just invading my space.
I don't know. I find that so hilarious. Like, no, he's just invading my space. Anyways, Gabriela, as you'll see, Gabby, she's super sweet. So even one of the comments she made towards the end is that I truly believe that every parent is trying to do their best. So I think Gabby has a great combination of genuine care for children and adults, but also a directness. And it comes from knowledge and experience that, yeah, there's certain things we need to be doing if we want to aid children and aid ourselves. So I love that combination. Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about Gabriela's background because I'd rather you just hear her give you guidance as parents and teachers. However, briefly, she was a Montessori child herself, grew up in Mexico, attending Montessori schools there. Mom was a Montessori teacher. And then she eventually decided to become a Montessori teacher herself, getting her credentials through AMI, which is Association Montessori International. And she worked in the classroom for over 20 years with 0 to 3-year-olds. At some point, she decided, well, I want to be a trainer too. So she started teaching adults to become Montessori teachers, and that's through AMI as well. So she does that, training courses, all over the globe. We're talking Argentina, China, USA, Mexico, Poland, Spain. It's just on and on. So this woman's the real deal. And I could continue going on about her accomplishments, her accolades, all this stuff that she's been up to. So if you're interested later, I will get her contact information at the end. And if you want to dive deeper into her background and so forth, go for it. But for now, I just want to get to some of these questions and topics we cover, like what can we be doing with newborns? How much should we be talking to them, for instance? Are toddlers by nature just messy and always wanting to cause a ruckus? How important is structure with 0 to 3-year-olds? These type of things. So without further ado, here we go. All right, Gabriela Velazquez, thank you for coming on. I'm happy to have you on the show.
Hi, Jesse. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about 0 to 3 today. What is Montessori for that particular age group? So I thought, hopping in, I like to get kind of an impactful story from guests that I have on the program. So is there something that kind of stands out to you? You've been in this for decades now, that just jumps out as this is a Montessori moment?
Well, probably the fact of this huge development that happened, especially the first 12 months, when you have your newborn that barely can move and depends so much on the adult. And in 12 months, this is a child that is able to walk, is able to start communicating, is more independent. For me, that's the moment that is like, oh, so why we should keep doing this and why we should keep spreading information about child's development, because this is a moment that is important.
Now, so you're saying like this is it. And I have a child of my own now. Ragnar, he's about 2 months old right now. Mm-hmm. Clearly there's so much going on for parents at home that might look at, the 0 to 6 at the least of like, well, wait, why is this so important? Because all my child's really doing is he's pooping, he's peeing, he's eating, and he's sleeping, right? Like what? Yeah. Why is this so important? There's all this intellectual work later that could be going on. This is the important stuff?
Oh, actually, it's completely the opposite. Right now, especially the first 12 months, but let's talk about 0 to 6. So from 0 to 6, it seems that the child is doing nothing, eating, pooping, and that's it. but actually the child is discovering the world. So the child is a sensorial explorer. Everything that is in the environment, they are absorbing through their senses. They have a mind, that is like a sponge that can take everything from the environment. But the most important from 0 to 6 months is they are adapting to this world. Just imagine, it's like we go to Mars, that we are from another planet, and we arrive and we have to discover everything. You need to figure out the language. You need to understand how the people communicate. You need to understand how to move. So in these 6 months, they are discovering that. There's a transition, for example, of the different positions of their bodies. Every time that they acquire a new movement, they can explore the environment in a different way. Around 5 to 6 months, they are able to sit, for example, so their hands are free. So once the hands are free, they can start eating. They start the weaning process, for example, or they can reach toys. So just by the fact that wanting to reach a toy, the children are developing their will. So the more that they develop their will, the more confident they are. So basically, 0 to 6 or these first 3 years of life is the foundation of who we are in as an adults. Everything that we live in these first years is going to leave a mark for the rest of our lives in who we are. So that's why they are so important.
So two things that you said. So one is, just quickly, we went to a farm this week, and a family friend has a farm. And, this is the time Ragnar is supposed to go to bed, or around the time that Ragnar was normally at home would go to bed. So we're in this area and thinking, oh, he's going to go to sleep. And he's just like, his eyes are wide open, and he's looking up, and there's a fan there. But to us, as you were kind of saying, like, everything's brand new. If they were on Mars, like if we were on Mars, it'd be like, wow, like look at this. It's just, everything's so amazing. But I think as adults, sometimes it's difficult for us to understand that fan to the child, 2-month-old, is everything. It's like, wow, like the Mars thing that you're saying,
Yeah, it's trying to figure out everything. It's like, for them is understanding that they don't have the power to control everything in the environment, that everything could be unpredictable, but at the same time amazing. But everything has a name that I need to learn the name. So everything is new. So something that sometimes we forget as an adults is that they are learning, they are absorbing. And they have a rhythm, the rhythm is 10 times slower than ours. So if you ask a question, for example, you need to give time so they can process the information. And sometimes we think that, oh, it's a baby, they don't talk. Why you waste your time talking to the baby? That should be the opposite. The more that they stimulate the children, the more that they will want to know more about this world, the more that they want to interact. And the most important, we are the role model for them, for these children. So the more that we enjoy life, because it's not just being this adult that is connecting the child with the world, is not just giving all this information and knowledge, it's sharing the joy of life. It's enjoying when it's raining, discovering with them, it's discovering the world with them. I think that's why I love this age, because they are constantly exploring and discovering.
Yeah, and that I think ties in with the second thing I was curious about, is that you said about the emotion, like this is when they're forming their view of the world in a way, and their feelings. And I like that now you just added that, this isn't all about doing the things to them, but a joy of life for us as adults, because they're absorbing that, right? Like that's what's happening. So how do you, if you're thinking about that joy of life, and then you think about, well, the normal parents in those first few months, which is kind of like, oh my gosh, how do you, just guidance for new parents at home, with a child, or even for, one who's having another child.
Yeah.
What's some quick, easy tips for new parents that are Montessori style tips?
Yeah. Well, probably the first advice or the first tip could be, before you're planning to have a baby, to start getting ready to be a parent. Start taking classes, learning about how children develop, because we come to parenthood it's like a blinded parenthood. No, we have all these beautiful ideas and dreams and expectations, but the reality is so different. The reality is that you're going to be tired because this baby needs to learn how to regulate their sleep. No, they don't they don't know how to fall asleep. They have the ability, but they need to learn. So my first advice will be that, like, be prepared to be a parent. The second is, once you're expecting your baby, try to find classes that will help you to understand what happened during pregnancy and how to prepare for the first months of life. Especially the first 40 days after birth are really important, not just for the baby, for the whole family. Because before, imagine that there's no babies in this family, no? Like in your case, that this is your first baby. So this is your first baby, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, maybe I was assuming. Okay, so imagine that this is in your situation, your first baby. Before your baby, it was a couple, no? You, your wife, expecting a baby. After birth, you're a family. So each member of the family, we need to learn how to assume our role. How am I going to be a father, the father that I want to be? How am I going to be the mother that I want to be? But in the meantime, something that I have seen and I experienced as a mother, and I keep seeing now, is we have a lot of social pressure of how to be a perfect parent, how to be the perfect mom, the perfect, everything has to be perfect. And that is unreal. We need to have clear goals of how we want to raise our child, but our child is going to be completely different of what you are expecting. Something that I learned from Judy Orion, that she has a quote that I love, that she said that between the reality and the expectation, in between, you have the frustration. So the more expectations that you have of this ideal parenthood that you want, the more difficult it's going to be for you. So probably not expecting could be another advice. Another thing that helped a lot is preparing the environment ahead of time. Where do you want to put the bed? Where do you want to put the nursing chair? You need to decide as a family. Do we want to use a crib, or do we prefer to use a floor bed? Do you need to decide who's going to come to help you in the first days to clean the house. There has to be a lot of organization. Mm-hmm. The more that you can plan, or the more that you can organize, you as a parent feel that you at least have something in control, that you are not losing completely control of your life. So that could be another thing. There's a lot of consultants now that you can have a Montessori home consultant that can help you to set up the environment. It's important to have, if especially the person that is going to be spending more time, or if there's a mom or what is exactly the feeding style that they want to use, if they want to give like bottle feeding or breastfeeding, or how they're going to feed this baby. So once you decide that, then you also you can find consultants. I think we need to understand that it's impossible to know everything. It's impossible to do everything right. We need to make also some mistakes to learn, that was not a good idea to not let the child to have a nap, no, because then the child is getting a little bit cranky. So I don't know.
Yeah, so
probably those are the things.
Yeah, one thing, because I'm thinking this idea of control, it sounds, when a child comes in your life, there's a certain amount where you have no control over what's going to happen. No. But to the extent that there's things in your house that you can control, where you feel most comfortable. So that's where you put the feeding chair, something like that. And I like that, because you're basically saying we can get as much of this environment set that we as adults, pre-child, we know we like, and at least you feel you've got some control over that. Because when the child comes, as much as what you're saying, he's going to be exactly like this, or she's going to be, it's not going to be like that. Like it's not going to
Yeah.
happen. So I like that. Now I wonder, with this whole the expectations and the perfection, I get the sense that in our culture, there's like these two opposites that are thrown at us. One is, you've got to get all these materials, you've got to have this perfect environment, you've got to have this perfect setup and all this. And on the other end, there's this, well, mothers just do things naturally and it all will just work out perfectly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So there's like two complete opposites, but both of
I know.
those are kind of like
I know.
super pressure for
Mhm.
moms and dads, to extent. So have you
And really,
seen both of those? Like, what do you think?
yeah, and I think they are, again, I think probably in my time when I was a mom, we didn't have so much social pressure as you have right now. No, because in social media, you see all these perfect parents that we really don't see the true. I think I don't want to go to that route, but yes, I see families that, for example, are really common comment is, no, I don't do Montessori because it's pretty expensive. That is not true. Montessori is not just materials on the shelves or the way that you arrange the class, your house. Is the approach, the respect, the independence that you want to provide to your child. It's something that I work a lot when I do home consultations is whatever you have in your house, we can make with whatever you can imagine in your house, we can create materials. Any space could be a Montessori space because it has really simple principles. It has to be child size. It has to be proportionate to the amount of freedom or the amount of, or the skills that the child has. So yeah, I see this like, I need all the materials. No, you don't need all the materials. It's different when you are setting up a school. Yes, you need all the materials because you're going to have a lot of children that will be using these materials for many, many years. So in that case, yes, you have to invest more in those materials. But at home, for example, you can have a peg and different rings, different colors, different shapes, different sizes. And the same peg, you will use it with different purposes. But it's the same peg. It's not that you need to buy 500 pegs because in the courses we have these pegs, right? So I see that. The other that we know naturally how to be parents, I don't think so. There's people that might have this ability, but some people they don't, especially if you have never been around children. If you were not planning to have children, no, it's not true that it comes natural. Yes, there's some hormones in our brain, oxytocin, for example, that there's a lot of research that prove that the mother and the father during pregnancy and in birth, they start releasing more oxytocin exactly to support or to help in bonding. There has to be a bonding in the first months. That's how you fall in love with your baby. But that doesn't mean that we all know how to be parents. I think we need to learn because sometimes your personality and the temperament of your baby might not be the same. No, perhaps you have a lot of energy and you have a low energy baby. That can create a lot of tension. That can break sometimes the dreams of many parents. So I think, yeah, I think there's no perfect. We need to learn always to be parents. And because whatever you try with your first child, that doesn't mean that if you do exactly the same, you will have the same result with the second or third child, because we are all different.
I'm with you. And I think in our culture, oftentimes perfection becomes like everything is exactly as I imagine, pristine. And it is an impossibility versus thinking of perfection as, oh yeah, I'm doing really well, but yeah, I'll make errors every now and again, because that's a part of being a great human, is that you make errors, you're going to mess up. And what you just added about, as a parent coming in, you're going to have expectations, even if you think, oh, I'm not going to have expectations. we all have these internal expectations,
We
right?
need to have them.
And I like
Yeah.
the example you gave of like, a very extrovert. I want, and then if your child were to be this calm or the reverse, that can be a hit for parents. So I'm wondering, like, I talk a lot on this podcast and in Montessori about the journey in or looking within that Montessori talks about, that we need to develop ourselves primarily. What does that look like in your experience, either as a mother, in Montessori mother, or throughout all of your years working with children? What are some things that have aided parents to kind of prep themselves emotionally or spiritually for this big journey that they're going to be on?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, wow, that was a tough one. Probably first of all, we need to be kind with ourselves. No, if we cannot be kind with us, I think it's going to be a little bit hard to be kind with others. So we need to, that's why I love to work with toddlers, because you know what? They are always in the present. They don't remember what happened yesterday, or they are not thinking about what is going to happen later. They live in the moment. So this is something that also as a parents, if we just keep in the moment and connect with the moment, what we are doing right now, that is also helping to release a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of, oh my God, I made a mistake. I say no to my child. No, because now we are afraid to say no to children. So that is something that I think is important. The other thing that I also learned is after observing and working with toddlers is not being afraid of the mistakes. The mistakes are experience. You need to make mistakes. You need to learn that, oh, that was not a good idea to offer a soda to my child because now he doesn't want to drink water anymore. No, he just wants. So we need to learn from our mistakes, and we need to learn how to overcome the mistakes. It's not that you're going to carry all your mistakes all your life, but you need to learn. It's not an excuse that, oh, well, no, you need to improve. You need to find sources that help you to find the answers that you are trying to find. And something that I also think is important is we cannot expect the world and the society to come and fix your problems. You need to be in charge of what is happening in that moment with your child in your house. So there, I don't know. I think if we don't work first in ourselves, it's going to be kind of hard to help the children sometimes. If you have you seen these moments where the parents ask the child, stop screaming, stop shouting, but the parents are doing exactly
shouting themselves.
They are shouting. So it's like, how about if we do the opposite? There has to be a lot of self-awareness, and it's hard. It's easier to see outside than to go inside.
I think I've thought about this with Maria Montessori a lot because she's so with it in observing children. And I really have wondered if she actually raised Mario herself, would she have been able to get that altitude above your own child? Because it's hard. It's hard to get out. And I've seen this over my years working with parents and children, that I can see something so clearly. And it is something that's like obvious, but a parent is so deep in it that it's hard to get out. So I wonder in that case, like even just the example of you shouting at a child, usually 0 to 6, you're not gonna get a lot of shouting at the children. It's later. But I mean, toddlers for sure, the 2-year-olds. So how can parents get a better sense of seeing themselves, or maybe just to get away from this kind of spiritual end, because it's hard to talk about, okay, what are we going to do to build? Maybe a really practical thing is, what are some things that you do with a toddler, you as, Gabriela, the teacher, that makes parents think, wow, this woman's a magician. She's so amazing with our children. Whereas I can't get them to do anything, What are some things that you do in the classroom that that parents seem to struggle with at home, where you're like, well, we just do this, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, that reminds me so much. Many years ago, they were twins, and they came to my school, and the father was like, it's gonna be impossible. These children, they are always crying everywhere. We cannot go anywhere. So I just looked to the children. They were like not even 2 years old. And I said, okay, you're gonna come with me. We're gonna go to the classroom, and I want you to show me what you want to work with today. But I was giving them all the respect. I was talking to them the same way that I will be talking to you or to any parent. And the father was like, oh my God, how do you do that? And I said, well, basically, I just trust. I know that they understand. I am giving this trust that they can do it, and that make a whole difference. Um, when everything is prepared for them, when we have clear rules, that's a big thing. Children go, especially from 0 to 3, they go through a sensitive period of order. They need order in their life for so many reasons, but the most important is they can predict what is going to happen in the environment. They know that I have a routine, that I'm going to wake up, my mom is going to be there, then we're going to go to the park. So they can predict what is going to happen. So this gives a lot of sense of security. So order for them is in every single aspect, in the people that I see every day, in the way that I do the things every day, and where I can find the things everywhere in my space. So this order is really important in this stage. There's a wrong impression or idea that toddlers are messy, no, that they cannot follow rules. That is completely the opposite. They rely on limits, and they rely on order. Limits for them are super, it's like a railroad. You need to have these railroads so your train can go from one place to the other. If you don't have them, your train is not going anywhere. And this is what is really important in these first years. Limits is, we have a grown impression that is something negative. Limits is where you're going to put your clothes after you go swimming, no? Where do you going to store your shoes? So that is limits, really simple. So keep it order in the physical space and in the human environment. That is going to make the difference. You will save a lot of tantrums, because the order helps the child also to be independent. This is an egocentric child. They need to do the things by themselves, not because they don't need the adult. It's because they want to be like the adult. They need this independence. So probably that's something that you can try.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, even the train tracks example, you can see that. I mean, I love that you're kind of giving a visual for this, because I think at home, a lot of parents, whatever the child's age, the home can get messy quickly, right? And then the order is being disordered, and then children have difficulty with that. Mm-hmm. And just in terms of the respect that you're talking about, I think we weren't raised, and maybe you were because you're a Montessori child, but surely I wasn't raised in an environment. I love my mom and my dad, and I mean, but they weren't Montessori parents. So it wasn't that they had the idea that at some level, this child is an equal to me. Now I'm the guide, I'm the adult. So there is a difference here, but just the human respect. So you would think of, it's not wrong to yell at your child because they're doing something wrong, or it's not wrong to tell your child, go do this now, because, well, they're the child, you're the adult. And what you're saying is that respect goes so far, and I've seen this throughout all of my time in Montessori. You say, "Oh, would you like to come with me and see this?" And then now you've got a child who's choosing to clean his stuff up versus you having to yell at him. But I think that's, for us in Montessori, it's so normalized now, but it's such a radical view of adult and child. The relationship between the two.
Yeah, I think sadly, there's still a lot of lack of information, thinking that just because you are the adult, you know everything,
Right.
and you have, I don't know. Again, I think limits is confusing with yelling and punishment, and it
Yeah.
doesn't have to
It's
be like
connected.
that. Yeah, I don't know, probably
Yeah.
because I didn't grow up like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's kind of confusing, like the other day, for example, I was having a conversation with my daughter, and she's like, she told me, why you never set me limits? And I said, what are you talking about?
Limits
She's like, yeah,
everywhere.
you never set me limits. And I said, you have a time to wake up, you have a time to go to sleep, you have a place to put your dishes, you have a place to do your work. That Those are limits. She's like,
Mhm.
oh, but you never were like shouting. And I said, well, because I just knew that if I just say one thing to you, you can understand. Because
Yeah.
again, you think about brain development. If we get super upset and we shout, what happened? You're not listening anymore. You're just want to protect, and you just block, and you don't hear anything.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's really effective to be shouting to the children.
Yeah.
But there has to be limits, because I have seen
Yeah.
also the other scenario where you are like sportcasting everything,
I, I
and
know.
it's like, so the child
What
is
is
gone
going on?
like 5 minutes ago, and you keep
Yeah.
telling the story. No,
Yeah.
children are in the moment. Set the limit in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So Gabrielle, first of all, the sportscast, I think, because this idea of talking to your child, like being open, is, and often that's for much older children in terms of having a conversation, where I think people, we push it down, we're like, oh, well, we need to be respectful. And then you have these sport casting for hours, as you say, for like with a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. It's like, it's a little bit
Yeah,
too much. We need to chill out a
yeah.
little bit. Yeah.
For example, when you're changing a diaper, no, in your case, you're
Mm.
changing the diaper. Yeah, you're talking with with your child. You're explaining the different parts of their body. You're telling him what you're doing, no?
Yeah.
But how are we gonna learn to have a conversation if there's no moments of silence? If
Yeah.
there's no if it's only me talking all the time. They
Yeah.
cannot learn how to have a conversation, because there's always your words, instead of being words, become as a noise. Like when
Yeah.
you go to the groceries and there's like this music in the background, it's
It's in the
like
background.
that. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it's in the
Yeah. And it's like
background. It's
you,
like,
I feel like it becomes like these teaching moments. I'm going to teach my child. It's like, no, we're human beings interacting with one another. Like it's not, this doesn't have to be some massive, big teaching moment, you know?
well, in some way, yes, we are this teacher. No, we are this, more
Yeah.
than the teacher, we are the model of
Mhm.
how to be a human, how to interact in this world, how to be respectful. But it's better. I can't remember the quote, but it's better. How it says this quote? Just be aware of what you do instead of what you say. No, be the example
Oh
to
yeah.
your. I can't remember
Children,
exactly.
children do
Children
what you do,
see.
not what you say.
Yes,
Yeah. Or something
yes.
like that. Yeah. I don't know
So
the exact word.
I think we
We're
should make
both
the quote.
brainful. We'll get that quote. I'll put
Yeah.
that quote on the page when it's,
Well, I just
uh,
remember there was a commercial campaign in England that it was children see, children do. No, so they
yeah.
said all these awful examples of people smoking, children smoking, and people being racist, people being like all
Yeah.
these bad examples. And the campaign was that, like, be more aware of what you do or what you say,
Yeah.
rather than trying to teach your child.
Yeah. And I see this a lot today, in that there's a push to get your children to be kind. And if somebody is pushing it, like, you got to be kind, you got to be the sweetest boy. And it's just like, no, just be a sweet woman, be a sweet man, and they'll do it. And one thing that you raise, I think, is really fascinating, is that you're saying limits, and even your own daughter came up and said, hey, you didn't give me limits. And I think you're right that limits, that word, in at least in the States for sure, goes along with traditional punishments, traditional yelling. So I think you're right. And that might be a big issue generally, because even the idea of, quote, independence, it's a loaded word, because some people think of independence like, oh, my child just does whatever the heck they want. I wonder how much of Montessori is so confusing because some of the language, we might be meaning something different than what somebody else is hearing.
Especially now that you mentioned independence, it's so interesting how we confuse independence with letting the child do whatever they want, whenever they want, wherever they are. No, sometimes you are in the restaurant and the child behind you is pulling your hair or is throwing things, and the parents are like, oh, he's so social. No, he's not being social. He's just invading my space. And that's different than following the child. Following the child is, you want to interact with this woman that is next to us. Okay, let's approach, say hi, and then we just continue. Because of my work, I have the opportunity to go to different countries and see different cultures, and this is a common that I am seeing in a lot of countries. This child that can be running in the airport, no, or this child that is running and kicking you in the airplane, and nobody say anything, because independence now is do whatever you want. Being independent is having the ability to also regulate your impulses. Not because I want to jump, I'm gonna jump from the car. No, there's places, there's heights appropriate for that. So you cannot have independence if you don't have limits also. That's why always Dr. Montessori, she referred like freedom and limits are the two sides of the same coin. You need to have limits in order to be free, but to be independent, you need to have the freedom to find and do the things that are good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you doesn't mean that you have, really, I have seen children that they used to come to my classroom to sweep the shelves, throw the materials, and that is not letting the child be independent. That is helping your child to be completely isolated from the group, because nobody wants to be with a child that is constantly hitting or biting or not respecting. So limits are important for independence.
Yeah, and I like that you're keeping it real, Gabriela, because when you say these comments, I can just see the parents saying the very things like, "Oh, he's just being mischievous," my little child, and it. I know this much, even when a parent says that, even when it sounds like this mom doesn't care, I know inside she's probably like, oh my God, my child's a mess, and that's why I think the contrast is, because again, it sounds like you're seeing this in other countries as well, but I know in America, I'm not concerned about too many parents being overly strict these days. It's actually the opposite. They're being way too lenient and not thinking about like the limits you're talking about. And it becomes a stressful mess for everybody, because no parent, as much as supposedly I like that my child can do whatever she wants because we're in the modern age, no parent likes a child who's running around making a mess of things, like it doesn't feel good inside. So what do you tell a parent that's trapped in that thinking, oh no, I don't want to be too strict with my child. I want them to grow up and feel good about themselves but meanwhile, they're doing the opposite because they're not giving them any structure, any foundation to develop that independence and uprightness as an adult. Like, what do you say to those parents? You've said a lot because you've talked about the limits, but more like, how do you get them from where they're at to where you're at in a way?
So I think first of all, I truly believe that every parent is trying to do their best. I truly believe that. I want to believe that we are all trying to help the children. Um, First of all, because I work in the classroom 22 years, so I encounter so many different type of families, so many different reactions, people that decided that Montessori is not for them, and that is also true. It's for all the children, but sometimes it's not for every family. That is true, and I am a trainer, and I know how there's families that they don't understand, no, and instead of helping the child in the school being independent, but at home having so many like really oppressive environment, that is not good for the child. So I think first of all, I will start with things really simple, like really simple goals. My child is all the time, every time that we want to leave the house, my child is crying and making a tantrum all the time. Okay, I will start from there. Let's observe what happened before. What do you say to your child before you leave? When did you tell your child? Or you are in a hurry all the time. Sometimes all these kind of tantrums or these challenging situations between parents and children can have a really simple fix, and is time. You need to give time to the children. You need to prepare the space. For example, I used to live in Cancun. Instead of fighting of how to put the sunblock before we go into to the school, well, I have a small stool with a mirror and a small container with sunblock, and the child was able to do it independently. So you need to start with the small changes. You cannot make radical changes. You need to be convinced of this is what you want. You need to make not be afraid to say no. I'm not saying that we should avoid saying the word no, but the word no and setting limits are necessary.
Yeah.
You cannot let the child run because you are in the middle of the parking lot. That is not safe. So
Yeah.
you have to set limits, and you don't need to be afraid. I think right now we are so concerned of what other people will think about us, if we are good parents or we are not good parents. I think again there's a lot of
Yeah.
pressure here, but I think maybe I lost your what you
No,
asked
I think
me.
that's good. You're going, and I actually want to bring this because you're saying this societal pressure and so forth. Like, are we good parents? I think generally we're seeing this because I'll give you an interesting thing that happened to us. So we're new parents. We were coming into being new parents. So as my wife was pregnant, we're the type of people that want to research things. We want to understand it for ourselves and not just, even if it seems like of course we're going to do this. Like for us, vaccines is, it's a hugely debatable issue. So I'm not going to say you should do this or you should do that. But
I know.
just the fact that the pressure on either side of that debate, oh, you're going to give your child a vaccine, or how could you ever not give your child vaccines? So our attempt to even research it for ourselves, just to say, okay, what are the vaccines? How are they developed? What do they do? I have no I don't care either way. I have no I've got my money on the winner or this. I just wanted to understand for my child. It was so hard to just find place that said, we're not going to try to convince you. I just want to show scientifically. And then even trying to find doctors. So what we were thinking is maybe the physician would they have so much knowledge, it would be great to have the conversation. There were places that if you do not already have the vaccine, or if you do not commit to doing all of the vaccine schedule, we will not see you. So we couldn't even have. Now, ultimately, we believe that vaccines are good for children. We get the vaccines. I'm not talking about COVID. I'm talking about some of the old school vaccines. But we wanted to think about this like rational, independent individuals trying to understand it for ourselves. And it was very hard because each side wanted to push their perspective without treating us like, oh, you're an independent human being trying to understand something. So I raise this, Gabriela, because I think societally, you're supposed to agree with this side or that side. The idea that you can think for yourself and try to make up your own, understanding. I think it's similar with children. We expect them to follow us. We know best, so follow me. What do you think about that? I know there's a lot going on, but you see.
Yeah, the thing is, it's so interesting. I was thinking about colors when you were talking about that, about this. So I am a black and white person most of the time in my personal life. But when we talk about child development, I cannot be black and white. There's a rainbow in between. There's so many options. But what you are saying is important. You have to be informed, vaccine or not vaccine. Something that I always say to the parents and to the students, you have to research so you can take a decision based on knowledge, with a lot of knowledge, not because it's a trend, not because your neighbor is doing that. It has to be a decision that fit with your values, with your desires, with the way that you want to raise your children. I have seen a lot of times that the children are in Montessori schools, even though the parents are not convinced about Montessori.
Yeah.
So it's a contradiction. So whatever we do, whatever you decide, co-sleeping, not co-sleeping, breastfeeding, not breastfeeding, you have to be convinced of this decision. You have to be in peace with the decisions that you are taking. But always observing if there has to be a change. Sometimes we are so afraid, again, the mistake. We are afraid of making mistakes.
Yeah.
We need to learn to live with mistakes, and we need to learn to deal with the consequences. But we are humans, that we have the ability to change whatever is not working for us. But it's interesting because we have this, when we talk about child development, I think we all the time we want to be black and white. And it's impossible. I think it's impossible.
And you've been in Montessori for so long. I wonder if if you pop on Google and start, say Google one of the questions that you know the answer to, but Google it as if you're a parent Googling that question. There are so few places that try to explain to parents, let's talk about this so you can form an opinion about it or your own view. Almost everything you read is, your child should be doing this by 3 months. That's the way in which, as adults, we're being communicated to.
Yeah.
It's not a learning process that's happening with knowledge today. When you're training, I'm sure you don't go, children do this, now follow that. You're guiding them through a journey, right? I'm assuming that much.
Yeah, no. Yeah, usually I say around this age, because there's a quote from a friend. She's a trainer, Sarah Bradley. She always say that development is like reading a book. So there's people that can read a book really fast, and there's people that take forever to read a book.
Yeah.
The same happens with development. Every child is unique. Every child will develop in their own rhythm. They will start walking at a specific age. They will start saying the first word at a different time. But we are so, I think we are afraid because we care. If we didn't care about children, we will not be so concerned.
I agree.
So yeah, I don't know.
It's like turning that care around, because even as a new parent myself, I had recorded one podcast episode about fear, and I don't think it's possible to not have fear in some way about your own child, because you're responsible for this being, it's going to be there. But to the extent that we can look at that fear and say, what makes sense? What part of that fear is actually healthy? And what part is pushing us to do stupid things as parents? So I like that you're basically saying, this is coming from a place of care. If we can start with that as parents, as human beings, even as teachers, because I'm sure you've dealt with some teachers that do they can't give themselves just some peace and relax and breathe. They get stressed out. So that place of care, I think, is where we're coming from. Now, just given your experience with this age range and thinking that, we're reaching about an hour here, is there anything that you want to ensure that you get out to parents, to teachers out there, to both, either? You let me know, it's your time. So
Something that every time that I have the opportunity to share with audience is the emotional life of the children. The emotional aspect of the life of the children is more important than any other thing. We need to give them this safety space where it doesn't matter what they say, what they do. They know that you're this safe space where they can come back. That is really important. If we don't take care of the emotional life, not just the toddlers, if we don't take care of our emotional life, it doesn't matter if you have a high IQ and you're super genius and you have all the perfect environments. It doesn't matter. We need to take care of the emotional life. The emotional aspect will help the children to succeed and to feel confident and to be independent, and then reach all these intellectual and financial goals that we have, no? Because we expect the best for our children. So we need to push less the children to be confident, independent, perfect. No, we just need to accept the children exactly the same way that they are accepting you, the way that you are. We should be exactly the same. So for me, the emotions are so important. We need to take care of their emotions before we start taking care of their intellect and their independence.
Yeah. No, and it sounds like from what you've said, and I know just thinking about the classroom environment, is that you do that often through setting those limits, offering respect in the classroom. That's how the children develop that strong emotions. And I wonder, just quickly here, the distinction between being a teacher with 0 to 3 or a guide and a parent. What do you see as, there's similarities, there's huge similarities, but is there a difference? And what do you see that as? I know some parents, they want to imitate the guide. And then there's some guides who think they know more than the parents. They want, so what is the distinction?
That's so interesting. Well, before I have children, I was this type of guy that I was like, I know more than the parents. How they don't know how to say no, how they cannot do this. No, once I become a mother is when I realized, like, oh, it's not that I didn't set limits. It's hard to be a parent. No, so the difference that I see is when I am in the classroom, I am in charge of 12 children, not just one. So I don't engage so much in these tantrums, because it's like, okay, just let me know when you finish, and then I can show you a material. I don't get so connected or so engaged in this negative aspect, because I also need to take care of other children. And at the same time, I promote so much this independence, because we are trying to create this sense of community. At home is different. It's the love of your life. No, it is your child. So of course, the emotional connection is even stronger. So your feelings, good or positive or negative, are really strong. So that's a big difference. I have learned from so many mothers, especially the ones that have a lot of children, the peacefulness that they have, the ability to organize their day. That was something that I always wanted to have. But being a teacher also gave me the opportunity to learn that my responsibility ends at the door of the classroom. Whatever happened at home, the parents are responsible. Whatever happened in the classroom is my responsibility, but we work together. So I can give them some advice, I can give them some recommendation, but at the end, the parents are responsible of whatever happened at home. So I think you as a guide, yes, you are really kind and you can have all this emotional connection, but you as a parent, it's impossible to, I don't know, I don't see how we can do the same work. We all have different roles in the life of the child.
Yep.
So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that's good. I was just, I mean, it just came to me and I was curious if you had a distinction that I think that's helpful. And I think even just your last point there, it's like what you're somewhat saying is like a guide, you shouldn't be flipping out on a child. It really, like that's something's gone wrong if you're flipping out on a child, but a parent, not that you should be flipping out on your child, but you could see that potentially happening is something you're not like hitting your child, but I'm just saying like you're getting really frustrated.
I see. And the thing is with the guy, well, I finish working Monday to Friday, but now it's your turn to take care of your child all weekend. And that's it, no?
Yeah.
So it's different.
Yeah, it's different.
One is
the
a
bell
commitment
rings.
of 8 hours. The other is a commitment for
24/7.
life. Yeah, for life.
Well, cool. Well, Gabriela, I'm really happy we connected.
Thank you so much.
Got a lot of insight. And I like how you keep it. You've got a lot of knowledge, but you keep it real too. So I appreciate that combination.
That was good.
So again, thank you for coming on. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone. Coming out of the conversation there with Gabriela Velazquez, or Gabby, I just like to offer a big thank you again for being on the show. Super insightful. And I was just thinking, we covered so much there. She really covered so much. She offered so much value that I just wanted to quickly summarize a few, I think, key points. So one is, in the beginning, she had mentioned that everything is new for a newborn. Like, funny enough, literally, they're called newborns. So just to always keep that in mind with very young children, wherever we are, that what we see as normal, we might not even be aware of it. Like there's a fan above us in a restaurant or different colors on the wallpaper in a friend's house. The child, it's brand new to them. So allow that child to focus, allow that child to explore with the eyes, with their hands. We don't need to be crowding them with a bunch of stuff. The world around them is already so exciting enough because it's all new, as Gabriela was pointing out. Second big thing, clear rules and order, structure that limits. I think she mentioned a lot about that. We discussed that a lot, and I think it's huge. There's a sensitive period for that order with young children. We need to be super aware of it. And I love the analogy she gave to a railroad, whereas like if the rails aren't there, if they're not set properly, that train, first of all, is not going to move. And then if they're there, but they're all over the place, that train is going to be a big mess, go off the rails. Okay. Like most people think young children are kind of all over the place. And as Gabby noted, no, they're not when the rails are in place. Okay. That doesn't mean there aren't times when they're going to flip out. They're going to do something you don't want. Of course, it's the nature of life. I mean, listen, I'm 40 and sometimes I do things that I might not want. And I got to ask myself, well, why did I do that? So that's just the reality of life. But generally speaking, at a very young age, children can be much more calm, composed, active in a positive way if there's that structure, that order and limits there that Gabby spoke about. Third thing, the emotional life of all children, just how important that is and to take care of it. I think that was more towards the end when Gabby was mentioning that. Basic idea here, love. We need to show love and care for these children and just be a place of just we're there for them. And, Montanaro, Dr. Silvano Montanaro, very, very famous Montessori, and she's no longer with us. She's of the old school Montessori. But she had noted once, I'll just read it to you, quote, "The best thing to offer to children is a loving relationship. This never changes throughout life. Human love is a basic necessity." End of quote. And I think Gabby's basically getting at that. Without that love, without that sense of care, without that emotional life that Gabby mentioned, none of the rest matters. You could be the most well-educated, most knowledgeable. You just are the super, super bright child. But if you're not loved, that is a dangerous, dangerous combination. And, on one kind of scary note of all this, I don't think we're going to have this problem with any parents here, but at some point I got to do an episode on this. But if you look at the scariest people, I mean, I'm talking really evil stuff that goes on throughout history, you almost always find an issue with a lack of love in the home. So the parents were either abusive, or just not there, not present. So anyways, that took a little dark turn there. My apologies, but it's just the reality of it. So anyways, love, love, love. So important. And then I think just to close here, Gabby had said something that I really appreciate. She just said, I truly believe that every parent is trying to do their best. And I think that we just always need to come back to that. We're doing our best. We're going to make errors. That's the reality of being a human being, as we talked about, even the idea of perfection. Perfection as a human being means we're going to mess up. It's what do we do about those mess ups that matter. So we're doing our best. Let's keep at it. Let's keep rocking. Again, thank you to Gabby for coming on. If you want to reach out to her, she said the best way is to go through Instagram, actually. So her handle, or whatever they call it on Instagram, is GABY, so Gabby, V.ATOI. So just if you're on Instagram, put that in the search thing, friend her, or whatever you do on Instagram, that's where you find her. Me, as always, you can just contact me through montessorieducation.com. I did want to note that sometimes I send emails through to a list that I have. So you can join the list there. And that's where sometimes I'll shoot an email about Ragnar or my son again. It's almost 3 months now. Or other things like articles I've put out, podcast episodes, that type of thing. Usually about once a month or, twice a month, something like that. So get on there. And lastly, thank you, as always, to everyone who is liking this show or leaving a review or rating, any of that good stuff. It is super helpful. And you guys just seriously rock. I love doing this podcast. It's a lot of work, but I love doing it. And you really make it happen by sharing what we're up to here. Like the podcast has grown. I get more emails from people. And it's just a good time all around. So thank you very much for listening in and spreading the good word. That's it. I'm not going to keep rambling here. Good talking to everyone today, and we'll see you next time. Adios.